go. Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope everybody is doing well and doing the right thing and being kind to each other. I'm Dan Schinder here on Drum Talk TV, broadcasting from Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains. And my guest, I'm so excited to ask so many questions to, is Maor Appelbaum, who is a wizard of mastering recordings, and he's coming to us from Northridge, California, in the valley where I grew up. Maor, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk to you because you've worked with a lot of my favorite artists. And the funny thing is that probably my most favorite artist that you've worked with is the band Yes, and we'll talk about that. And on Sunday, if you're watching this live, folks, or before Sunday the 14th, I'm doing a 2-hour tribute to Alan White for his birthday. I've known Alan since 1989. He's been a huge influence. You also mastered my friend's album. You probably remember working with Yuval Ron, who had Marco Miniman as his drummer, and I'm interviewing Marco tomorrow. So this is so serendipitous to have you on.
Wow.
And you worked with Meatloaf, and I had Meatloaf yesterday, and the kicker is that you've worked with Limp Bizkit, and because of diabetes, I kind of have Limp Bizkit syndrome. But anyways, tell us, for those who don't know, a lot of musicians out there and fans basically know how a record is made. You got to have a good room, good musicians, of course, a good room, good miking, good producer, good engineer, a good recording, a good mixing session, but then your role comes in. Kind of explain to everybody what the mastering step is when it comes to putting out a great recording.
Well, the mastering stage is the final part, and it's after everything was done in the tracking and editing and then all the mixing. It's basically like a buffer between the product and the listener, but not as the product, more of like it's the last step where you can tweak it,
right,
to present the music sonically better, even though you might have achieved the best. Now you can optimize it to work on different systems, playback systems and formats, platforms. And it's also a place where you have the chance to make some creative adjustments that are left in line. If you want to brighten it or darken it or add more low end or take some low end or tighten it up, or, the mid-range, or make it more aggressive or soften it, you can do so much. And of course, volume level and change dynamics. So there is still a place where changes can be done both technically and artistically, and thus being a creative step. But it's the last step, and it's the buffer between the production and the listener or the consumer. Think of it as the prosumer and the consumer together. It's also a place where you get objectivity. The mastering engineer is not involved in the process prior.
Right.
So he hears it like a listener on its first time.
Fresh ears. And
he can bring an objective and new perspective to it, and he has the control to do that. Because there's the gear that I can use to make the changes and improve it.
Right.
So it's a small step that affects big time, but it could also be little. It could be 2%, 3%, 5%, and then or 10%, 20%, even 30%. But the listener hears it. He hears it as everything because it's part of the whole production.
Right. I love and I love the aspect of the objectivity because, as you know, and as all musicians know, if you've ever recorded, when you're in it and you're tracking and then you're mixing and editing and all those things like Maor said, it's so easy to get so immersed that you almost lose sight of where you lose perspective and you lose sight of it, and it can easily become a forever project. Whereas then when they hand it off to the mastering engineer, again, that's where the objectivity comes in. And when you are in that role, Maor, do you work with the producer? Do you work with the artist? Or you're pretty much left to, okay, here it is. This is what we want out of it. Or like, how does that handoff and transition work for your process to begin and work through?
As with every project, I want everybody to be happy.
Right.
The ones involved. They don't have to be involved immediately. They can listen to the result and then make a decision if they like it or not, or they need me to make changes. It could be a small change, like, a fade here, fade there, or moving the track forward. It could be changes in the sound. Sometimes they have ideas that can benefit, that can help the project. Sometimes the ideas are more a taste.
Right.
Not always they're helping, but there might be kind of a bridge between what they got and what they like. So you find that middle ground. And in some cases, it's not bad at all. In some cases, it's actually improving because they had an idea that actually can, work really nice with it. In some cases, it's not that great. And then, you tell them what you think and kind of like, involve them with what the results can be. And if they decide not to do that and keep what you gave them, then great. And if sometimes they want the change, and it's their record, it's their song, it's their album, whatever it is, EP.
Right.
It's their product in the end of the day, and I got to cater that. So if I think it's not going in the right direction, I will mention it. But if they still insist, then we go to that, give them what they want.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But there's a lot of times where, they'll have an idea and it can work with what's there. And it's not a big deal to change it. It could be like, it might require work to do, but it might not ruin what's there.
Right.
So, think of it this way. Mastering is like when you go to a museum and you see a picture, the picture itself is the song and the mix. The frame or the wall behind it or the lights,
Shining on it. Yeah.
Shining it is probably the mastering. It's the presentation.
Oh, okay.
If the light is above and it's very bright, it's going to make the picture look bright. If the light is dimmed, it will make the picture look dim. And the positioning of the light will make the reflections different on the picture, and thus you will notice different colors in a different way. And the framing itself will give you the focus. There's a picture in a museum with like a brown frame, it immediately gives it a vintage look. But if you take that frame off and let's say just have a big empty wall with nothing on it and it's just blank, then you got the picture, that's a different presentation than having a different color on the wall or a different type of texture on the wall.
Right.
So
that makes sense. Yeah.
So are you?
I like that. Are you able to give an example of a project you worked on where you thought of introducing something in the mastering process to the producer or the artist that they didn't think of, and that they said, "Oh wow, we didn't think of that," or "We like that idea. Let's hear how that sounds," and then that became part of the ultimate mastered product? And if so, can you explain like how that process worked?
Well, in a lot of cases, it's better to me to actually show a result,
right,
than talk about the result. In some cases, I will discuss a situation with a band, like what I'm hearing, and ask them if they want that, But in most cases, I will work on it and then present them. And then if they connect to it immediately, then great. If they feel they like it, but they need a change, we'll do.
Yeah.
Sound is not like picture. A picture you can immediately see and say I like or not. Sound you kind of have to feel, love time. Pictures also you got to go deep into. I'm not saying art, visual arts are not that way, but I'm saying with sound, it's a bit different than picture because, there's a saying, a picture is worth more than 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
So and also sound of mastering is based on what I get from the mix and how I work that. It's not like a picture where you draw and you show someone.
Yeah.
Cover artworks are easier to show somebody and say, hey, this is what he did. Oh, wow, from scratch, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What, in mastering, kind of, there's something before it. Creating, helping to present it differently. The creation is just the presentation and not from the scratch material.
Right. That makes
the art
sense.
of mastering is the art of working with what's existing and improving it. So usually it's rare I'll talk with the client regarding where to go with the project unless they have ideas up front, they want to share with me, or I feel that it can go different ways and I just want to make sure, so I'll ask them. In most cases, I have to do it, present it, and see how they respond.
Very interesting. I want to welcome the audience real quick who are just joining us. Thanks, everybody, so much. If you have questions for Maor about mastering, because that's the topic today, please go ahead and pop it into the comments. When you see me look over here, folks, I'm not watching a hockey game or the Lakers or anything. I'm actually looking at our show and looking at comments. Something you said, Maor, relates to a question that I had triggered in my head, and that is, you mastered Heaven and Earth for Yes a few years ago. Beautiful album. And you also mastered their most recent live album. Is there a totally different approach to mastering a studio recording versus a live recording? Or is it basically the same because sound is sound and you're going to do with it whatever you feel needs to be done with it?
Well, I've done... My daughter's calling me just a second.
That's okay. Ask her what her favorite Yes album is. No worries. Folks, tell us if you have questions for Maor. And thanks so much for chiming in. Daniel Robinson, David Casanova, how have you been? Craig Kimbrough, thanks for tapping into the show. Jeffrey DeBarthy, nice to see you. Ron Dady, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Hope life is good for everybody. Let us know if you have questions and where you're watching from. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I want to tell the audience that before we started, Maor and I were talking, and he gave me a disclaimer that my dog might scratch at the door, my kids might come in. I said, oh, how old are your kids? He said 4 and 8. And I said, I can totally relate because my wife and I, between the two of us, we have 11 children. However, the youngest is 25, the oldest is 43, so they're grown and gone, but we have 19 grandkids, 2 years old to 20, so we could totally relate, so it's all good, don't worry about it. But yeah, what's the approach, and I'll check comments again in a bit, folks, but is there a difference in approaching an album like Heaven and Earth, the Yes studio recording, versus their live album that you did recently?
With Yes, I've done 6 records.
Right, yeah, name all of them.
So Heaven and Earth was the last studio album,
right?
And the last to feature that lineup was Chris Squire in terms of the studio recording.
Right.
We all miss what Chris brought,
Oh, yeah. Amazing musician.
And pioneer, amazing musician and band leader. I still remember when he passed away. So I did that record, and then I did 2 live albums that had Chris on.
Right.
Which was Yes As It Is, or something like that. Live at the Hippodrome,
yeah.
Crystal Dome, and then live at Menza.
Yeah.
Art Center, I think that was in Arizona. And after that, I did with a new lineup where Billy Sherwood placed Chris, and Jay Shelley joined the band. That was Topographic Drama.
Right.
It's a live album. And then I did Yes 50 live.
Right. That's a great album too.
Knees in the back. You see it on top there.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Great album.
And then I did another one. Which
What's that? Say that again.
and then there's another one. But anyway,
Oh, what's the other one?
I can't.
Oh, really? Okay.
But anyway, anyway,
The live versus studio approach
Yes.
to mastering.
so in a live show, you have the audience, you have a different type of mix,
Right.
you have a different energy there. Okay. Now, the first two live albums I did with them, they were DVDs.
Right.
Visual too. And in the DVDs, there were certain things that in the CDs, in the sonics are different because when you, there's like certain low end that comes from the Taurus pedals. And in the DVD, you see it's either Chris or Jeff. I don't remember which one of them was
Or
playing.
both sometimes.
Then, and you hear that low end, and you see the visual, and it connects with you.
Right.
Where when you don't see that, then where it comes in. So there's certain things that you need to take into consideration. Plus, in a DVD, because the way it works on the system, there's a sub usually engaged too, so it will take that information.
Right. That makes sense.
So, so when I work, I have on a live record, I have to take into consideration that I want to make it sounding as best as possible, but it has to reflect the live show.
Yeah.
Okay, which means the crowd, which means how the entries and ends of the songs go, and
Right.
and also there's certain frequencies that can come up in a live recording that you might need to kind of work them out because they can be a bit more noisier. You know what I mean? They not noise, but they're more excited due to the extra microphones and the
Yeah. I think a great example would be the crowd getting excited and making noise during the somewhat quiet intro to changes. Dun, 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 and all of a sudden you got this wave of crowd noise overlapping onto that. That gives you a whole different dynamic to work with.
Yes, and also in a live show, the dynamics are very different than a recording because in the recording it's a controlled environment. And you can control how you want it and what you want to emphasize and what not. In a live recording, it's much harder because these are shows that are during a tour.
Yeah.
And it's what's there.
Spontaneous.
And it's again, there's the noise is not just noise like crowd noise. It's just a live show is always a bit more uncontrolled.
Yeah.
And microphones pick up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so the tonality is different, but I still want the live show to be the best I can. And I'm not a person who cleans up things like surgically, like forensic style.
Right.
I like to keep the sound organic as much as possible, but at the same time, make it a pleasurable experience, at least on what I can do. I can't control what the audience is doing. I can't control what the band is doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I only control what I can do, sonically with the two tracks, the left and the right, and, the frequencies and dynamics of what's there.
Right. With studio recordings, I have a couple questions about mastering studio recordings. The first one is it still more of an overall treatment, or are you able to zero in on certain instruments by way of certain frequencies? Like, for instance, is there ever a time where you're able to somewhat just adjust the drums and percussion sonically without it greatly affecting everything else, or is it more of a blanket treatment?
It's a very good question. You actually kind of answered it in a way.
Okay.
Um, I can't hone on an instrument. I can hone on areas
Mm-hmm.
that will affect it. And
Frequency
sometimes
wise, right?
it's frequency and dynamic wise because certain equipment, or that could be either plug-in or hardware, analog or digital, but certain equipment will have its inherent tone to the sound of the recording running through it, and it might emphasize certain frequencies and even tame or extend a certain dynamic, and that can, let's say, make the drums bigger
Right.
or vocals more present, or the width of the panoramic soundstage bigger or smaller.
Right.
So you can it's not a blanket as a blanket. It's more of like, call it big brush moves. It could be also like very narrow and small brush moves, but in general, your ability to control the elements are based on how you work the frequency and the dynamics and what's with them. And it's not instruments as more as sections that are together.
That makes sense.
You get some noise from my kids outside now?
Oh, I don't hear it at all, no.
Yeah, I'll just tell them to lower a bit.
Okay, but I don't hear a thing. Let us know if you have questions, folks. Oh, I do see some questions. Ron Dady. Hey, Zarly McAlpine from Bonnie, Scotland. Mate, how are you? I hope everybody's well. Phil Kamza. Lee Piatelli, great drummer. How are you, sir? Mark Doran. Daniel, I will ask Maor that as well. Steve, thanks for chiming in from Houston. I hear Houston's having another big wave. There might be some more strict lockdown restrictions. So wishing everybody...
Sorry again.
That's okay. I have a couple questions from the audience. First,
my daughter found what do you call it? Roly poly. That's the name.
Yeah.
We call it kaduli in Hebrew. It means like uli as a ball. So she got excited and she's like, I need to move him out. So I picked him up and I had to open the porch.
That's so sweet.
Out,
That's part of being a dad.
It's
part of being dad.
Yeah, and I'm like, she's 4 years old, but she's not just 4 years old. She's 4 years old and she's I don't know how you call it, like, doesn't care. I own the house.
That's hilarious. Here's a question from Ron Dady. He says, while mastering, what is the process used by listening back while mastering? In other words, is it mostly headphones? Is it small versus larger speakers? Is a lot of near field listening? Or do you run the gamut of all of that?
This room is tuned in a way that it would represent the mains, the big speakers, the PMC IB1s here.
Right.
Those big ones. I have a few speakers, as you see, but the room is tuned in a way that will represent very well what it sounds like. Of course, with these speakers now, you can get to 85, something like that % of the whole system's, kind of trying to get the ballpark.
Right.
Sometimes there's a speaker that will work differently or a headphone that will work differently. And if it doesn't sound right there, I'll usually ask what model it is to see and try to figure out why it sounds like that. And if I can keep the sound to make it still work there, but it has to translate on others. Like, I can't go by, just because one headphone didn't sound that great, I can't change what 10 others would sound.
Right.
I have to find a happy medium, and if there's a problem, like in a certain car stereo, I will ask the questions to understand why. And it might be that a certain range of systems might need a tweak, and we can tweak it. Right. And that's why it's good that, the client, I asked them to listen to on a few different systems that they know. Headphones, earbuds, car stereo, computer speakers, whatever is possible. And if you have 5 band members and everybody's checking on 5 different systems, you got 25 systems.
Yeah.
But in general, I have these speakers if I need to check other options, but the main speakers is what it's really
Most representative.
Yeah, and again, like I said, sometimes there will be a certain speaker, or that will, or a few that will sound a bit weird on something, and then we'll just tweak it.
Yeah.
But that can happen even when you're listening to your best sounding records, they might sound different on something else.
Right. No, that's great. I want to thank Ron for that question.
That's why I always tell people, communications is key.
Yeah.
Okay. And if something sounds weird, first you don't need to get really agitated about it. We have to see why it is. It could be you accidentally changed or your kid changed your setting on your stereo.
Yeah.
Put a lot of bass, and you're like, why is it? And we go back, it's like, oh, he put it plus 12.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Ron. Thank you for that. There's another question I saw. Let me just find it. I don't know who this person is that they're asking about, but Daniel F. Robinson says, ask Maor if he knows Chris Lord Alge, I believe.
Alge.
Yeah, do you know him?
Chris is a very famous mixer. I don't know him on a personal level or something I know who he is. He's very famous. And,
very cool.
He's done so many records, but I don't know him on a personal level that we talk or anything like that. But we know, I've seen him.
Yeah.
It's a music.
Is there a project that you've worked on that you can point to and say this was the most challenging one, and kind of explain what was so challenging about it? Like, was it because of the way they recorded it or how it was mixed? And I guess you could answer it both studio and live separately. Give the answer to both, because I think that would be fair, because they're so different, as you explained. But so let's start with studio. Is there a studio project that was really challenging for some reason?
The word challenging is challenging as well, because you're challenging me now to remember things. Every recording that comes in has a challenge. Sometimes something that sounds amazing is already a challenge by itself, because I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Let's say you record the best drummer in the world. Okay? Now, some will say, oh, that's no challenge. It's just like the best drummer in the world. Well, it is a challenge, because if it doesn't sound good, you did a bad job.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay? So just because something sounds really good coming in doesn't mean it's not a challenge. It could be even a harder challenge to
maintain, right?
Okay? Every project comes in has its clues to where it should go to. Okay? Sometimes a bad recording is a challenge by itself, but then you find a way to make it sound listenable. Okay, that's a challenge by itself, right? Then something that sounds amazing comes in and you just want to preserve how great it sounds and just enhance it a bit. That's a challenge by itself.
That makes sense.
Okay? Yeah. Sometimes you got something that needs fixing but needs enhancement. That's a challenge by itself. And sometimes you just need to know what not to do.
Yeah.
That's a challenge by itself. Like maybe just add a dB in the right place, or half a dB, or just a dB in the filter. But that's a challenge. And here's another challenge: communicating with people. That's a challenge by itself.
Oh yeah.
I can't say that nothing is a challenge, because every project I've ever worked in, even if it was a piece of cake, what do you want to call it? No, it's always a challenge. Yeah. It's a guessing game. You got to think, what would they like? Right,
because you might have a picture one way that's perfect for you, but not necessarily for the client.
Yeah.
Yeah. From my days of producing, back in my day, when I was doing a lot of recording and session work, this is the late 70s, into the 80s. Um, Two things. One, when you were talking about, making sure it performs well, the end result performs well on different devices. Back then, we'd bring 3 different boom boxes into the control room. We'd run a rough mix onto a cassette tape. Later, it was DAT, but we'd put on cassette tape, put in 3 different boom boxes, a Walkman, which I still have on my shelf up here, where I collect old recording devices and cameras. Then we'd throw it in one guy's car, and we'd all sit in there and listen to it. Then jump to the other guy's car, listen to it, and listen to it on every speaker set in the control room to sort of find. And then you ask yourself, well, at the time, we would say, well, what's the happy medium? This is only what we have to work with to listen to it here right now. And to your point, it was like, well, what about what everyone else has? And this is before digital. It's before MP4s, MP3s. It's before all that. We were recording on 2-inch tape most of the time, and editing was done with a razor blade, and just a whole different thing. But thinking about those old days reminded me that I know from reading up on you, in your studio there, you have a really nice array of gear. You don't have just the latest and greatest, most sophisticated digital hardware. You also have stuff going back to that's generated by tubes, to get warmth. So how often does it come into play where you hear something and you say, I know exactly, there you go, yeah, I know exactly what this needs, I'm going to this tube device? Or how many times, Maor, does a client come to you and say, can you just warm this up with some tube stuff and turn all the digital gear off that you have? Like, how much does that old school stuff come into play with today's recordings?
And we got to a point today that a lot of things sound really good, but a lot of them sound very similar. So you get to a point you get 10, 20, maybe 30 mixes from 10, 20, 30 mixers, and they sound really good. But in a lot of cases, they sound very similar because they were done in the box, but a lot of them were kind of using same samples, same plugins, same. So with the array of gear, I actually have more than what you see here on the desk. There's other racks here, but I have the ability to shape them, color them, give them a different vibe, and make them sound different from each other. Of course, those 30 mixes that I was talking about, they're not exact the same,
right?
But they feel it, and
they're similar, right?
Yeah, but not everybody. There's projects that come in that sound very different than others, but like totally far differently. But the reason I said about that 30 mixers or 30 mixes is because technology today has gone so far high quality. And people at home today can get results that they couldn't get even close to 20, 30 years ago. And I'm not even talking about the difference between a 4-track Porta Studio to a 2-inch 24-track back then. Right. I'm talking about today you can get results that even with the 2-inch you couldn't get.
Yeah.
Okay. There's things that the 2-inch can do to the sound that nothing else can do, but the results today are so pristine.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing what you can do, and it's amazing how you can abuse that too and get bad results due to over processing.
Right.
But the tools are there and they're so powerful that sometimes I hear mixes from people who are not mixers, but they worked a bit on it, and I'm like, wow, this
got some good results. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get those results when I was, back then.
Right.
That's what's amazing. And so I have a lot of tube gear, and I have a lot of analog solid state gear, and they have their sound too.
Yeah.
It's not you need the tubes to make it sound older or
right.
You can use solid state, and there's a lot of factors in gear: tubes, transformers, solid state. The transistors, the chips, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the variety of the tools I can use, either external or in the box too, the combination can yield a lot of great results because we're not using them just because we have them. We're using them has the right tools for the right job.
Right.
That's very important. It's like if you put a great drummer on a bad drum kit, he still is a great drummer.
Right.
But he might not sound as good as if you put him on a great kit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That makes perfect sense. I want to see if there's any new questions real quick. Oh, here's one.
By the way, I hope you guys are not upset of me going out there and talking with my kids. And sometimes I can be a bit of like, hey kids, I'm in the middle of a broadcast. This is important. These people are watching this and they want it. They want no interruption.
It's all good. It's all good. Zarly McAlpine out in Bonnie, Scotland says, do bands record for the main music apps in mind these days? That's a great question. So I guess to elaborate on the question, I'm pretty sure what Zarly means is when they shoot for a finished sound, are they shooting for how it's going to sound on Spotify or Bandcamp or, those platforms versus a vinyl record versus, all these other different ways to deliver music? What's like the goal, or are there separate mixes and mastering results for those different platforms?
Technically, you can divide and make different masters for each one. I try to make a master that translates the most on most of them and is consistent. So you hear one format and the other, they're close. Vinyl is a different case. It has its limitations. Even after I master the sound, there's a few other processes involved in making the vinyl which can affect the results.
Right.
There's a cutting engineer later on. There's his lathe and gear that he uses.
Right.
There's the lacquer quality. There's the plating quality. There's the pressing quality. There's a bunch of factors that are way beyond
after the mastering.
That are after the initial mastering.
Right.
So you can ruin, but also, they can ruin or be as close to what we've done as possible. Plus, the format of vinyl is different. The way it's cut, they have to change how the frequencies are there and the dynamics in order to sit well on a record.
Right.
Also due to time limitations on each side and how much bass can be put on a record. And with the length, of course.
Yeah.
If it's something, you'll probably not have much problem with the bass. But if it's a lot of songs, that takes, space on the record. And it's a whole science. It's physics by itself.
Yeah, absolutely, because it is more of a physical product. You got a needle on it. My wife and I have a 1924 Victrola. And we have probably 3 or 4 dozen records from the teens and the early 20s. And she found online a whole bunch of replacement needles for our exact device. And it's really interesting to listen to the recordings back then and how much sound and stuff they recorded and jammed into this tiny little, it all sounds like an old Jack-in-the-Box speaker. But
Yeah.
It's just so fun to listen to, and the crackling of the vinyl, which is really heavy. It's not flexible at all, you can break it over your knee like a plate. It's really fun to listen to this stuff after, sitting in my office and listening to remastered Pink Floyd or Yes or something, and then put one of those on, and it's just like, whoa. And back then, that was like so sophisticated, as you know, and our exact machine that we have, our Victrola, we're only the 3rd owner of it. So imagine this. Back in 1924, when someone bought it brand new, you probably had to be like a pretty wealthy aristocrat, to have something like that. And you'd have guests over. They'd put something on. They would dance. Now you just have to be a dickhead like me with a couple $100. It's no big deal. But I love putting the music on. What's that?
You don't have to be a dickhead.
That's true. Just happened to kind of work out that way. But I love putting that old music on and kind of mentally and even emotionally kind of flashing back to having something like that to remind us of how good we really do have it, sonically. My hearing is horrible. after playing drums for 50 years, being married a couple times or so, having
It's
a
the
bunch
marriage,
of...
not the drums.
Right, exactly. It's the marriages and the kids and the grandkids and all that. Exactly. But it's still, with my poor hearing, it still amazes me what I do hear. The quality of what I hear, which you were touching on earlier, the sophistication and the results that people are able to get on the consumer level, all the way up to someone at your level of doing, platinum album artists' work. It's still fascinating. So I love putting that stuff on just to remind myself of, wow, how far we've come in about 100 years. It's amazing. Another question. Where'd it go? Here it is, from Daniel F. Robinson. And the F stands for effing, by the way. Daniel Effing Robinson, just playing with you, Daniel, says he's a longtime drummer like me. And he says, please ask Maor about Thomas Lang. What was it like working with Thomas? And what work did you do with him? I don't know a drummer that does not respect Thomas and his playing.
Well, first of all, it was amazing. He's an amazing drummer.
Yeah.
Thomas and I did work on a few projects. The first time I worked with him was a band called Schwarzenegger.
Oh.
And I worked with them before he joined. I did a few singles and I did an EP, and then he joined the band and we did an album together. And, it's a cool band. It's like the whole theme is about, Schwarzenegger, like movies, and they're all, each song is like a movie, and they're like kind of like what's happening there, and they're like the story, and the music is very extremely fun, but crazy. It's like if Mr. Bungle in a way, but with different theme, and all good players. Actually, there was a player there that passed away, Shane Gibson.
Yeah.
Amazing guitar player. He also played in Korn.
Yes.
And so I worked with them a bunch. We did different singles and the EP and the album. And so Thomas was the drummer during the album period. Then after that, Shane and Thomas had a band called Stork.
Had what? Sorry?
Had a band, like another band.
Oh, Stork. Yeah.
Stork.
Yep. And that's when Shane passed away, when they were together in Stork.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Stork had 2 records. The first one was an instrumental record. It was Thomas, Shane, and Eloy, the bass player.
Right.
And the second one was a different lineup, but it was Thomas, Shane, and then a female vocalist by name VK, and VK Lane. And then the bass player, I forgot his name. I don't think it was Eloy. It was someone else. That was a record with vocals.
Yeah.
Then later on, Thomas and I did another record called Umaflex, I think it was called.
What was it called?
Umaflex.
Yeah.
Right, Umaflex. And that was him and another guitar player. And I'm trying to remember other stuff. But we got to do quite a few projects. And
that's great.
And, he's such a great drummer. It's like, wow, it's like it's music to my ears, so
yeah.
I really enjoyed working with him, and he's a really good guy, communicates amazing, always fun, we talked on the phone, email.
Yeah.
It was a good collaborative connection, because there's a response. You talk with the guy, he gives you feedback, you send them, you talk, it's important. Today, for me, if I work with an artist and we have that connection,
it's everything.
Talk, discuss, it's just amazing, and you get amazing results that way, because
right,
you don't just guess.
It's a collaboration.
Collaboration, yeah.
Yeah.
And amazing, and I think Thomas is one of the best drummers I've ever heard, and I've heard a lot. Okay.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Okay, there are others too, but
yeah.
this one.
That's great. Just a couple quick shout-outs. Mike St. John from drumlane.net is watching. Some other faithful watchers of the show. Oded Caffrey, one of my favorite drummers. Oded, I owe you an email. My email shut down, and I forgot I had a draft up. I'll email you back on your question, Oded. He's amazing. He lives in Hamburg. You still in Hamburg, Oded? It's from Israel. And Mark Poison, how are you? Copo, Gerger, Housden, sorry, and Carlos Aguero. Um, Ingo Marte is watching, one of the best drum techs out there. Two last questions, Maor. The first one is...
Wait, before the question,
Yes.
let's say something.
Yes, please.
This goes back dating 2008. No, sorry. Wrong. This goes back 1998.
Oh, wow.
I worked in a studio in Tel Aviv called Delphi Studio. A band comes in, and this drummer plays amazing. In the break, I come and talk to her. I'm like, starting talking about stuff, and then the name Meshuggah came up. You know, the band Meshuggah.
Yeah.
Somehow, because we were talking about crazy drummers. That drummer that I was talking with at that studio in Israel, in Tel Aviv, about the band Meshuggah and other bands, is Oded Kafrin.
Really? Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Oded's a good friend and an amazing drummer. Folks, when we're done with this interview or after you've watched it, search on Facebook, Drum Talk TV, Oded, O-D-E-D, Kafri, K-A-F-R-I. You'll see all kinds of videos. You'll see my interview with him. You'll see a performance I filmed of him at the NAMM show about 3-4 years ago. Busking in London, busking in Hamburg, really entertaining. And the only drummer I know that plays with a big plastic Sparklets bottle as part of his kit. Yeah.
He did Smooth Criminal.
Yes, we just posted that about 3 weeks ago.
I checked that out. It sounds really good.
Yeah,
I think.
It's great.
Okay.
Oh, that's so cool.
So you wanted to ask me. By the way, you didn't ask me what drummers I like, but okay.
I was going to ask you that too. So let's start with that. Who are some of your favorite drummers?
Okay, so you have to divide that question to two.
Okay.
Who are living drummers?
Okay.
And the past drummers.
Okay, let's start with past.
Okay, so of course the names I'm going to say, people are going to be like, yeah, of course. Okay, so we'll say it. Okay, John Bonzo. I mean, that guy had technique, and he had power. He had tone.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's like, wow, you can just feel the drummer. It's like, you know. Second drummer actually would be my first drummer, but he's less of a technique, but he's an innovator in drums. He's probably the guy who punished the drum kit the most ever. He probably killed more drum kits than every other drum kit drummer in the world, and it's Keith Moon.
Yeah.
And I grew up listening to The Who, and for me, Keith Moon was the guy who took drums to another level in terms of what you can do to them, and if they stay alive after that, they were lucky. I think there's a reason Animal was probably based on him.
Yes, definitely.
And then another drummer who brought anger to drums was Ginger Baker.
Yes, and technique as a jazz drummer.
Right. But he what he did is he could make drums feel energized, but not just like Bonzo did that by energizing the song in terms of getting, beat, upbeat, low beat, whatever, upbeat, low,
Right.
Ginger made the drums have like tone of anger.
Exactly.
Okay? You hear even like Sunshine of Your Love or White Room. The drums are actually like a tone in terms of like, I'm not saying major or minor, but they're giving you the feel of
melodic instrument.
Yeah, like this song is angry or not angry, where Keith Moon would be chaos on everything, okay? But yeah, Ginger Baker was one of those.
I got to tell you real quick, a quick note on Keith Moon. Let me think, who was it? It was, it was Chad Smith. I was interviewing Chad Smith at the rehearsals for Brian Tichy's tribute, The Ox and the Loon, which we did a documentary. And in that interview, Chad described Keith Moon as he basically was soloing over whatever the backup band did. He's like just soloing through everything. There happened to be 3 other guys playing music.
Also,
Right?
John Whistle was doing that.
That's true.
They were both soloing all the time. If you
Thunder
really think
Fingers. Yeah.
By the way, Brian Tichy and I worked together. I mastered his record.
Son?
Mary Tishness.
Oh, yes. That's a good one. I didn't know you did that.
Cool, really cool record. And Brian was actually sitting here as well with me. So back to the drummers we were talking about.
Yes.
By the way, Brian Tichy, amazing drummer.
Yeah, he and I just did a 2-hour tribute to John Bonham on the 31st. We did a live broadcast, and we both cut in clips of us breaking down some grooves, and it was a lot of fun. Talked a lot of trivia and history. That was a lot of fun. I love Brian.
He knows a lot, and he's also a great musician. He plays guitar. He sings.
Yes.
He's really good.
Yeah.
I really like what he does. So back to the drummers. Of course, I'm going to name Neil Peart.
Right? I've heard of him.
He did some things, Neil Peart is the guy who would, if you ever thought of a drum fill, it's Neil Peart.
Yeah.
Okay? So those are, now there's a few more drummers that passed away that I would like to mention because I think that they were very phenomenal in their field. I mean, of course, there's way more that I'm not mentioning, but
Sure.
One of them is Nick Menza.
Yes. Oh, and what a sweet man he was.
Nick brought something very interesting to metal. And although in metal there's other very famous drummers which I give a lot of respect to, such as Dave Lombardo.
Yeah.
Even Nico McBride, from Iron Maiden.
Yeah, he's going to be on next Saturday. I have Nico on the show.
Nico brought something, he brought something that works really good with Steve Harris.
Yes.
Anyway, back to Nick Menza. Nick had something that was just the pinnacle of what speed metal was back then, and the lineup with Marty Friedman, David Ellefson, Dave Mustaine, that lineup was probably the most.
I agree.
The best lineup ever. And I heard, from people who worked with him, and I also worked with Nick. I mastered his band called Delta Knot. We did an EP together. So I met him in person, and we sat at Sound City and talked and told me some stories. Anyway, amazing drummer, sad loss, of course, for the metal community. And another drummer, which I was blessed to work with as well, and I did 3 records with and a demo, and another record that he played on was Sean Reinert.
What's the last name?
Sean Reinert.
Oh, yeah, Sean, absolutely. Reinert,
I did 3 Clinic records, Retraced, Carbon-Based Anatomy, and Kindly Bent to Free Us, and a demo for them, and he also played on Avalanche of Worms, A.L. Levy and Emil Wessler solo record. So, and a few other records that I worked on that Sean played on. Amazing drummer.
Yeah.
He brought jazz into metal.
Yeah.
And even if you listen to old records like, Death Human, which was the record he played on, you will still feel that drummer is something out of this world.
Yeah.
I got to give a lot of props to him. There's other, well-known metal drummers, as we mentioned, Dave Lombardo and Nico McBride. Brian or McBride? I don't know how do you pronounce it.
McBrain?
McBride.
Yeah.
I said right. Okay. Well, McBride, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Scott Travis too,
Yeah.
So those, now regarding the current drummers, okay, Bill Bruford.
Oh, yeah. The most unique drummer ever, in my opinion. I don't think anyone's ever sounded like Bill.
Right, and he's like a doctor on drums. And I think he actually has like a PhD in something in that field.
Yeah, he does. He's a musicologist.
Musicologist, right. So Bill Bruford. Danny Carey, amazing drummer.
Yeah, from Tool, absolutely.
Thomas Lang, I have to say the name again. Pat Mastelletto, I think that's his name, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Gavin Harrison.
So real quick on Pat, I got to tell you something on Pat. This was about 4 years ago. I got to have Pat on. Pat, I mentioned in a post that I saw the King Crimson tour where they had John Paul Jones open for them on John's second, his second solo album. So that King Crimson tour was called, I can't think of it right now. Something of Light. What's that called? Anyhow, it's the loudest concert I had ever been to by far. And I saw Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. I saw all those bands that are known for being the loudest bands. When I saw King Crimson, I had to leave after the 5th song because I was literally, it was so loud I was getting nauseous, sick, dizzy. It's the only concert I ever had to leave. Pat saw that post and apologized. So that's, but I really want to have Pat on the show. Yeah, Projections of Light, I think it's called. Forgive me, everybody, if I'm really screwing that up. But you mentioned Pat's name, so I had to bring that up.
No, it's okay. He's amazing. And, of course, Terry Bozzio.
Yeah.
And Simon Phillips and Greg Bissonette. By the way, Greg has an amazing sense of humor. I went into a clinic of his, and I was like, he was just impersonating everybody. He was just making jokes. He was like, besides him playing amazing, he was just, to hear him. And, there's a lot of younger drummers now that are getting, up there. And I think that, I learned this from my brother years ago. There's a lot of types of drummers, because he was saying this because we had a talk about it. He said there's drummers who you can hear the rhythm, and there's drummers who you can hear them melody-wise.
Right. Very true.
And, for example, see, do you hear my daughter calling me?
I hear something, yeah. Folks, chime in and tell us who some of your favorite drummers are, too, in the comments there. And then I got 2 more questions for Maor.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
No, if one thing my daughter doesn't know, and she knows a lot, is when I tell her I'm being interviewed, she doesn't know what the word interview is.
Yeah, it doesn't compute.
My son does. That's why my son is not bothering us. You guys out there, don't look at me as a bad daddy, okay?
That's so funny.
They just sometimes need the attention. We couldn't do this in a later time. So
that's okay.
So so there, I'm probably forgetting some names of drummers right now, but there's even drummers that are there, but they have their job technically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's drummers that are there beyond the job, and right. I give respect to both, because a drummer doesn't have to shine by playing crazy,
flashy, right?
He has to be really good at what he is. And then some drummers are part of the music, not just as a rhythm section, but they have parts that need to come out.
Yeah.
And same thing with a rhythm guitar and a lead guitar. Just because you play rhythm doesn't mean, you're not doing your job well. You might have been doing your job way beyond others.
Yeah, look at great rhythm guitarists from Iron Maiden, UFO. They're amazing. Leonard Skinner, taking turns playing rhythm versus lead. Many great rhythm guitarists.
Exactly, it's part of it, and I think that you have drummers that are just so good on what they do. I mean, of course, Porcaro, and we can name all the legends, but it's to me, like when I listen to King Crimson, Court of the Crimson King, the drums are singing.
Yeah.
less of a rhythmical like thing.
Yeah.
They're more like, they give you kind of, Ringo had that, by the way. Ringo was, as much as its rhythm, it was also a feel of music.
Yeah.
But one drummer that I have to mention his name, that I got to work on a project that he played on, and it was amazing that you barely hear him, but you feel him. Steve Gadd.
Oh.
Like I did this project from Japan, and it was a Japanese artist, but the band was Steve Gadd's band, I think. And he's moving that brush very slowly.
Yeah.
So you barely hear it, but it gives you this movement. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, you got a movement, but you barely hear it, but you feel it. And the producer was like, yeah, this is Steve Gadd.
That's awesome.
So there's a lot of interesting things that, there's so many drummers out there, and please understand, I don't know all the names, or I just forgot. Or
Yeah, there are so many, like you said.
There's amazing, people. I mean, that you just look at them and you're like, even Karen Carpenter.
Oh yeah, she was great.
You hear what they do, and you're like, oh, this is special.
Yeah.
And of course, there's people who followed it and learned from it and became, So, so I have to mention, and even like in metal, Mike Portnoy, that's an example of somebody who brought prog into metal in that form.
Exactly.
Peart Zumbeck, amazing drummer.
Yeah.
I worked on a bunch of records he played on when I worked with Rob Halford.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's. I used to be a bass player, so I have a good, loving relationship
with drummers.
Yeah, not loving on a sexual level, but
right.
but loving and I like to emphasize what the drums can do.
Yeah.
I want to mention another name of a drummer that I really dig what he did was Mark Zonder.
And yeah.
Played in Fate's Warning.
Yeah.
And I did a project called Spirits of Fire, and he was the drummer on that.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of the older Fate's Warning recordings, Bobby Zumbeck plays currently in Fate's Warning, but also, which plays amazing with them. But also, if you listen to old recordings like Parallels or Inside Out or Perfect Symmetry, those records, amazing.
Yeah. And I want to point out to the audience, that if you're hearing names of drummers or bands that you're not familiar with, it's always good to look people up. If other people are talking about someone in a good light and you've never heard of them, it's a tip that, hey, maybe there's some new influence there for you or something like that. So I have...
wait a minute. I remember now something.
Oh, okay.
There's another drummer that some of the old school guys might remember. Okay? New school guys, I'm not sure if they know. But he has a special way of drumming that if you listen to him like quite a lot, then you would recognize him every time he plays, and it's Vinny Appice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He has the thing where it like goes back, like when he'll do a fill, it's like a heavy fill.
Yeah.
And listen to all the Dio records he played on.
Yeah.
And you recognize his sound and you recognize his playing. And he also played with other bands too.
Yeah.
Sabbath, Black Sabbath. But he has something very unique. And I remember one time I was in a studio in Israel and there was a drummer there. I got his name. He was a really good drummer. And we were talking about heavy drummers. And he's like, yeah, that drummer, like Vinny, I really like. And another drummer with that same era, Cozy Powell.
Oh, I loved Cozy. Yeah. With Rainbow, his work was great. The 2 songs that he did on Robert Plant's first solo album were great. Cozy was one of my favorite rock drummers, absolutely. And the one album he did with Greg Lake and Keith Emerson, Lake and Powell, I saw that tour. Got in an accident, actually, on the way to that show. That was another story. Got broadsided in the rain while my wife was pregnant. I'll never forget that. But seeing Cozy do what he did with double bass with cowboy boots on, that was amazing. Like, I can't even walk in cowboy boots, let alone go. I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah.
He also played with Black Sabbath in a later
Yeah.
era.
Yes.
Billy Martin was the singer of the band.
Yeah.
I remember meeting Leif Massey. Yeah, that's the thing. He produced Led Zeppelin.
Right.
To the Coda. He actually designs mastering gear.
Oh, really?
So you see here the one with the green and red knobs.
Yes. Yeah.
That's his company, Masalik.
Oh.
So he produced a bunch of stuff, but he mixed that Black Sabbath record TYR. I don't know if it's pronounced TYR or TYR, but Cozy played drums there.
Right.
I think from what I remember. So
Very
anyway, I always liked Cozy's playing.
Yeah, me too. I have one more question for you. And
you said you had two.
Well, that was one of them. I was going to ask who your favorite drummers are.
No, you need another one.
Okay. Okay, briefly, what project are you most proud of that you've worked on?
I don't want to sound political, but basically every project that comes in, I feel really blessed and honored that I can be part of somebody's art.
Yeah.
I call it future history because it's history because we already finished it, but now
right.
It goes to people can listen to
it. And then
it
lives on.
It lives on, exactly. There's a lot of bands I work with that, I'm very proud of. Of course, some of the bigger names, like Yes and Meatloaf and Faith No More and Eric Gales and Starset and Sacred Reich and Sabaton. I need to look at some of the records here. But I remember Matisiao, Sepultura, Cynic.
Oh, yeah. Sepultura is great. And Angra.
I did Angra too, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of projects that I was involved with that I'm super, super proud, and like, wow, I would never believe I would do this, and I get to actually do this. Wow.
Right. Right.
So
that's fair. That makes sense.
And I've done with Billy Sherwood so much work. We've done like 30 records together. Some of them are his solo records. Some of them are Yes. Some of them are other
tribute albums he's done and stuff. Yeah.
Some of them are his different solo projects. Just the fact that you get to work on really cool music. Eric Gales, I did 3 records with him. He's an amazing guitar player.
Right.
Maor, I did 2 records. I did the comeback album, which is Soul Invictus, which was their latest one, and I remastered the first one. We Care a Lot, the deluxe band edition.
Right.
Yes, doing those records and the Yes records and Sabaton and it's just Prague Collective and there's a lot and you know what, I still every time I do this I still find it challenging in a positive way. Like what can I bring to the table?
That's great.
It's all about what now comes in and what I can do to this. And when the fans' reaction is like, hey, I really like this record, it sounds great, of course I'm not the only one that was doing that. There's other people involved in the process. I'm just one part of the whole team that made it sound great. But it's always rewarding that somebody will tell me about a record.
Right. Very cool. Okay, well, I have one last question before we go.
One? You had 2.
That was the first one. So the question is, when you're not mastering music and when you're not doing anything having to do with music, this is the Maor Appelbaum fun fact question. What do you like to do when you're not doing anything related to music? How do you like to spend your time?
I'm probably going to give you the saddest answer in the world. Okay. Back in the day, years ago, I was a musician. That filled me up with the need of making music. I lived in Israel, and the music scene was in a certain way, and I had something to bring to that music scene. Ever since I moved to America and I've just been working on mastering, I didn't feel the need to do anything else to recharge myself. I get so much enjoyment, and on both on a challenging way and on a rewarding way. It's like it's a challenge and it's the reward of it. It's all of it.
Right.
And it kind of fills me up. I do enjoy spending time with my kids. But as you and probably a lot of people in the music industry will tell and will know, live that way, it's a very demanding gig.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, in order to keep the ball rolling, to keep the lights on and the bread on the table and the house, the house rent, whatever, you gotta just keep doing it. And you might not have any free time or much free time to do stuff with other people, friends, family, even kids. So I try to do as much as I can with my work, and improve and bring myself to the clients to cater them their needs and their sonic requests.
Great.
And it's rewarding. And here in the house, the kids understand that, the wife understands that. It's part of the job I signed up for.
Yeah.
And I don't really need too much outside life to charge me up. It's enough for me. It's enough that I'll just now go outside to the barbecue and cook lunch for the kids and the family. I got enough sun.
That's awesome. I want to thank everyone for watching and for their questions. Thanks, everybody. Hey, Eric and Prada. And I want to thank you for taking... No, someone just... I could see that someone's watching that's jumped on.
I got you guys bored, huh? It's not interesting. I don't have drumsticks. No, just joking.
And I want to thank you, Maor, for taking time out of your day to share with us, your expertise from your life of being a mastering engineer. We'll do this again sometime. And hang on the line for a moment with me after I say goodbye to the audience.
Wait, before you say bye, I want to apologize for my bad joke saying I got you guys bored. I don't have, give a lot of respect to drummers. I think that you guys, you work harder than a lot of people are. And a lot of people don't give enough credit to that. And
that's nice.
Dave Grohl said it right, I think, is that if you don't have a cool drummer, your band is not that cool.
That's right.
And he said something like that. And yeah, it's important to have a good drummer because the drummer and the bass, they move everything forward, Even if you play stoner rock or sludge, you're still moving it forward, okay?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I have a lot of respect to you guys. I don't know how you guys know how to do this, like, get the hand doing this, the feet, the other hand. Like, you guys have something special that I don't know how you do, okay? But you got the utmost respect for me.
Oh, that's great.
And I want you to know that although sometimes snares get buried in a recording or in a mix or a master because of compression and or a kick mic, but it doesn't mean you're not felt or not heard. And at the end of the day, you give your impact to the music, and that's what people hear. So tons of respect, and keep rocking and beating those drum skins like they owe you money.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much. And thank you, everybody, for following what we do here on Drum Talk TV. Lots of great interviews still ahead, even just for what's left in the month of June. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get the newsletter that went out the other day with those announcements, which is where we put them first. Thank you so much. And thank you, Maor. Hang on the line, and we'll see everybody else soon. Thanks.